Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture. And in case you couldn't figure out from the image right in front of your face, today we're going to take a look at a Marvel Super Special, Battlestar Galactica, the official adaptation of the television sensation in full Marvel color. Not in full color, not in full Marvel color, in full Marvel color. And what is Marvel color, you might ask? I have no idea. It looks just like the coloring in every other comic book I ever saw them do. But look, it's called selling books, okay? It's called selling books. You do what you got to do. So let's take a look. Of course, we are adapting the pilot to Battlestar Galactica, which was also released in theaters. Pretty cool. I actually remember seeing it in a theater way back when. I want to make sure we get a good look at this pinup of Cylons in action. Very, very cool. So, Battlestar Galactica, Marvel Super Special number 8, 1978, based on the first episode of the television series Battlestar Galactica. Written by Glen Larson. Boy, they got that in about as small as possible. Let's see, a little more light, just a little more light. Okay. Edited by Richard E. Marshall, written by Roger McKenzie, drawn by Ernie Colon, lettered by Jim Novak, associate editor Ralph Macchio. No, not the Karate Kid. If you're new to comic books, different Ralph Macchio. Cover painting Rick Bryant, etc., etc., etc. Okay. We get a couple images on the front here. Here's what's more interesting, though. Contents. Battlestar Galactica, page 4. The Wizard of Hollywood's Dream Factory, 22. Life in the Future, 29. Battle Tactics, 31. Spaceships and Such. Hardware of the Future, 31. Aliens and Robots, page 33. So we have multiple sections in this dude. Now, I'm not going to do a whole thing on the story here, but I am going to point out a few elements that I think are of interest, because one of the things you pick up from this book is that McKenzie and Colon only had so much information to work off of. It's based obviously on earlier scripts. There's always changes made to TV shows. It's normal. There's a couple elements that are particularly different. Well, one in particular. But so we open up, we see the fleet. Now this is the story where the colonies are going to make peace finally with the Cylons after 1,000 years of war. And here's one of the first things that you'll notice. And we got Zach and Apollo. That's Zach, who played by Rick Springfield, if I remember correctly. Right now, is probably thinking about Jesse's girl right there. Doesn't look particularly like Rick Springfield. We all agree, President Adar, blah, 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 blah. Finally, thanks to Baltar. There's Baltar. Doesn't look like Baltar. That's not John Colicos. So, as this goes on, you'll see a few faces that look more or less like the actors who were in Battlestar Galactica, but you'll see quite a few who don't. There's also some interesting things happening with the color at places. I will say this. They got the hardware generally correct, which is important, especially you're selling this to kids, and that's a big thing for the kids, is what the spaceships look like. They got the Cylons right, although I think they give them more personality than you get in the actual show, because I don't think they understood quite what the Cylons were yet. They probably hadn't heard a Cylon voice. They didn't know it was that kind of dull metallic robot thing. I see it, a colonial viper. We cannot allow the pilot to warn the humans. Not now. You don't get exclamations generally from the Cylons. But we got the helmets right. So a lot of the accoutrements are right, but not necessarily what the people look like. That doesn't look a whole lot like Lorne Greene, though it's not entirely unlike him. So we get a dogfight in space. This is where they're figuring out this is all a trick of the Cylons. And they kind of talk a little bit about how we can outfly the Cylons, no problem. So now he's talking about Colonel Tigh here. So this is the Dama. But again, the color's not quite right. That's Athena. Colonel Tigh, what's going on here? Why is the ship on alert? That ain't Colonel Tigh. I mean, first of all, we all know what Colonel Tigh looked like. He wasn't a white guy. Also did not wear the pilot's jacket. So there's definite confusion here of who's who, what's what, at a certain point. And then we have, this is Apollo. So now Apollo looks a little bit like Richard Hatch, but he's black, I guess. Except in a minute, he's going to be a blonde white guy. But also, I was kind of going, wait a minute. But that can't be Apollo. Is it supposed to be It's confusing. It's definitely confusing. It would probably be less confusing if I'd never seen the original show. There we have Starbuck. Doesn't look a whole lot like Starbuck, although he's blonde. So then we have, because he's saying you'll have to tell Apollo about Zach. So again, is that like, I'm wondering if they didn't draw this character as Colonel Tigh because they made a mistake, and then somebody at some point told the colorist, oh, well, he's black. Oh, okay. But it doesn't, look like the actor. I'm trying now to think of the actor's name that played Colonel Tigh, and it's not coming to me. He was great. He was on Vegas. And so here we get Apollo, but he's blonde, and then Apollo's a brunette, and then he's blonde again, and I guess, I don't know who that's supposed to be, and he stays blonde for a minute or two. So we get the attack by the Cylons. They blow up the Atlantia. The Atlantia, where the President Adar was. They made their attack. Starbuck and Boomer are out there. Now they got Boomer pretty close to right. They see the Galacticas leaving them out there because they were heading for Caprica. So every once in a while the color is right, and every once in a while it's not quite right. But I do like the art. I think the art looks good throughout. It's a particular style. I think it works. Here we get Boxy losing Muffet. Doesn't look anything like Jane Seymour, really. Clearly not trying to make it look like Jane Seymour. She won't look like Jane Seymour the whole time through. And maybe there's an element of not having the right to certain likenesses. I don't know. I get the feeling it was a matter of they're working off early imagery. They don't know who all the actors are. There's some confusion. Battlestar Galactica was a little bit of a rush job. And that does look a little bit more like Lorne Greene. There's a little bit of a rush job, and, there might just not have been time to make sure Marvel was getting it quite right. And so we finally get to the point where, okay, we're going to have to take off and scatter into the stars and try to find this other colony. And here we get a little bit more, that's a little more Apollo as we know him. We get some nice pinups. Battlestar Galactica with the Ovions. Here's where it kind of gets interesting to me, and I think this is also a sign of the difficulty they had in doing this. They didn't have enough story to fill this entire thing. So we get quite a few articles. Now, the first one is actually pretty cool. Conversation with John Dykstra, interviewed by Steve Swire. So we get to hear from Dykstra, who, as it says in the beginning here, having won the Academy Award for supervising the special photographic effects for Star Wars, you were the perfect choice to perform the same function for Battlestar Galactica, yada yada. So yeah, he's fresh off of getting an Academy Award. For Star Wars, we see, it's always hard for them in these magazines to reproduce photography well. Get a little behind the scenes. That's clearly the Battlestar Galactica that they're filming around. We get another pinup. Here we get definitely more of Apollo and Starbuck. It looks more like the two characters than we've seen elsewhere. Here's the one part that I thought was interesting, and I'll read this bit. I know it's a little long, but I'm going to read it anyways. Marvel says, the facility in which you've accomplished these effects, which you've named, and I don't know that he named it, but maybe means you as in you and yours, which you've named Industrial Light and Magic, seems to be the ultimate Hollywood dream factory. What does your operation consist of? So here we get a picture of Industrial Light and Magic in 1978, or right around there. So Dykstra. It's a warehouse located in the San Fernando Valley. It's just a regular old industrial building that has big open spaces in the back for storage. We have offices in the front where you can come in. From my office, I can look out the window at some trees. I sit in a chair that costs $5, is full of holes, and has cotton and horsehair sticking out of it. The place is really very loose. Behind the offices is the shooting area. We have an optical department which consists of 2 aerial head optical printers. We have a complete machine shop that builds all of our camera equipment. We have a model shop in which all the models are constructed from scratch. Upstairs, above the office area, is our art department, where all of the illustrations, storyboards, and matte painting work is done, and where the designs for miniatures are figured out. We also have a projection room up there. On the other side, next to it, is the control area, which is where all the individual pieces of film that are shot on the stages are routed, being 1 component in 3, which end up making probably 30 components, which go into the optical printer and eventually come out as the final composite, the one piece of film you see on the screen. For a shot that's on the screen for 20 seconds, there are probably an average of 15 to 20 separate pieces of film that have to be handled and printed in order to achieve that final result. Alongside that is the rotoscope area, which is used to do animation for things like laser guns, firing, and garbage mats, which are special mats that are required to eliminate any elements from the scene that you don't want to see. Behind that is the whole stage area, which is broken up into 3 stages. One is about 100 feet by 50, blah, blah, blah. On each of these stages, we have a camera system. The main stage has the Dykstra Flex camera, which is the long track with a boom arm camera. Adjacent to that is the stage where we do most of our starfield photography and smaller miniature work. All of these stages have big transmission blue screens on them, so not green screen yet, blue screen still, with lots of lights, the regular old Hollywood stuff. Out in front of the building, we've got some trees and a big redwood tub that we filled up with water, in which we keep chemically balanced and use for our swimming pool. We've also got a big swing in one of the trees. I have my Porsche in the garage, which is right behind my office. It's a silly place, and we have a real good time in it, but we make the best damn special effects anybody has ever seen. The informal atmosphere was a problem during Star Wars because I refused to put in time clocks. I get more work out of these people. Excuse me, they work harder. I don't get it out of them than most people who have to punch a clock. When there's no immediate rush, we play around and have a good time. But when the pressure is on, nobody can do it faster. We built a particular device in 10 days, which was a pretty incredible job. Obviously, the technicians at the studio are quite good, but they're fraught with the same red tape that everybody else is. Television shows have an even higher level of red tape because everybody down the line is watching the budget. There's no open end on that. If it costs too much more than the licensing fee, then they're just not going to make it back, even if the foreign distribution does well. So anyhow, pretty good interview with Dykstra. Don't know if it's been reproduced anywhere. But I kind of like hearing that description of industrial light and magic, which at the time was sort of unknown. Hey, check it out. We got a centerfold. So we got a Dama. Now that does look like a Dama. So slightly better work there on the likenesses of the people involved. And it has a little bit of the feel of one of those classic movie posters, even though obviously the style is not quite the same. And of course, this is in Marvelcolor. So we end the interview here, but it is a good interview. Of course, Dykstra was going to be sort of leaving Industrial Lights and Magic because there was a lawsuit between Lucas and Battlestar Galactica, and he ended up sticking with Apogee, which was his new company, and doing the effects on Star Trek The Motion Picture, a couple other things, and didn't work on Empire Strikes Back. Say la vie. So then we get an article about life in the future. Now, these are the articles where there's a little good stuff in them about the show, about the world. Of course, it was all brand new at the time, but it also makes you feel a little bit like filler. Battle Tactics doesn't tell you a whole bunch. Spaceships and such, hardware of the future. And of course, again, we get the images, but the photographs never come out too well in these things. There's a nice pinup, though, from Dave Cockrum of an Ovion. I did like, though, that under aliens and robots, we get a little bit more on the Cylons. As a kid, I just figured they were robots, and I don't know if they ever really got that into it, but it does make it, they are cyborgs. They are originally, and I think it says it in here somewhere. If I can find it, I feel like it was after. I feel like it was after this point somewhere. But they talk about, they are reptilians, about 7 foot tall, bumpy headed, etc. So different Cylons have different amounts of cybernetic implants on their bodies. The Centurions have the most. Oh yeah, here it was. The Cylons happen to be a reptilian species that is generally taller than normal humans. They have knobby heads, are serpentine and gray in color, and are scaly and cold-blooded. Ugly, too. Although they don't care much for other forms of life, they are not so merciless that they want to exterminate everyone else in the cosmos. Besides, fear-ridden slaves make things a lot easier on the whole, so they're thoroughly evil, these guys. And they kind of explain that they simply don't understand emotion. And so human emotion just frustrates the heck out of them. It's one of the reasons they want to wipe us out. Here we get a pinup of Buffy. Buffy 2, really, technically. And then we complete the story. And so we get Adama, again, starting to look more like Lorne Greene, talking about this planet Earth that we need to go find. And they agree, and how are we going to get there? And we do have the scene where we meet Cassiopeia. But again, doesn't really look a whole lot like her. A little bit, blonde at least. Here's one of the big changes, though. And here's one of our sort of knobby-headed reptiles. We get Baltar. By your command, Imperial Leader, Baltar is here. Ah, welcome, Baltar, welcome. You have done well. I have done well, but what have you done? What of our bargain? My colony was to be spared. The bargain was altered. Could you think me so foolish as to trust a man who would see his own race destroyed? No, not destroyed, subjugated, under me. There can be no survivors, so long as even one human remains alive, the alliance is threatened. But surely you don't mean me, and you see that Cylon has his hands on his face there. Oh, but we do, Baltar. We most certainly do. And that sounds like it's coming, from the Cylon himself. And so out goes the sword, and that's the end of Baltar. And of course, in the show, Baltar was not killed right there. He manages to convince them to keep him on to hunt down the humans who have escaped. But it makes you wonder if that wasn't originally the plan. And then somebody got smart and said, wait a minute. Way better off having Baltar be alive than killing him off right there. He'll make a good villain. And Colicos is an awesome villain, as he was as Core in Star Trek. And on a pretty decent episode of Starlost. For those any Canadians in the audience. So we get them going down to the planet where the Ovions are. Again, I like the art. I enjoy it. There's the alien queen, Lotte. I don't know if I ever knew she had a name. Again, I was 6 years old when this was out the first time around. We do get to see the great aliens with the multiple eyes and mouths. I think that's one of the coolest effects. Coolest aliens ever on TV, in movies. And so we get the whole fight, but they go through this really, really fast. They go down, they fight the Cylons. They set off the planet. He finds Cassiopeia, and rescues her. And off they go, and the Cylons are attacking, but the humans left most of their warriors up on the Battlestar. So they're able to whoop some Cylon booty. But also, Lyra, and I'm going, was she named Lyra in the series? I don't remember. I don't think she was, though. I don't think Jane Seymour's character was named, but maybe she was. It's been a little while since I've watched it. So anyways, but she's also gotten the news that she suffered radiation poisoning and is dying, and she doesn't want to let them know. Okay. I also enjoyed this. Welcome to the Marvel Universe. Fantastic Four, Hulk, Spider-Man. The Marvel Universe. It's where the Hulk rampages, Spidey spins his crime-fighting web, the Fantastic Four battle the weirdest enemies around. It's where Captain America, Doctor Strange, Iron Man, the Avengers, and X-Men fight for justice everywhere, every way. It's where savagery erupts in the pages of Conan the Barbarian, Red Sonja, Thor, and Tarzan, and where science fiction looms larger than life in Star Wars, John Carter of Mars, and Star-Lord, and also Battlestar Galactica now. And it's where the new line of Marvelcolor magazines introduces a revolutionary method of color reproduction that creates startling effects in titles like Jaws 2, Kiss, Battlestar Galactica, Star-Lord, Savage Sword, Weird World, and The Hulk. Welcome to the Marvel Universe. You may never want to go home again. Again, I don't see anything color-wise in these that looks different from the Marvel comics of the time. But I'll take their word for it. Stan Lee wouldn't lie to me, would he? Would he? Okay. So here's the back cover, and I guess if we put this all together, by the way, I was saying, they're almost giving you a Death Star feel there, but I guess not. That's one of the Cylon Raiders. There's a base star in the background. I guess if we open it up. No, maybe not. I was going to say it's probably a fold-out cover, but not necessarily. Oh, yeah, okay. Laser from him going over. Okay, anyways. Marvel Super Special, Battlestar Galactica. This is one of my favorite TV series when I was a kid. I recently bought the crazy-looking box set, which is like, got to be the worst thing ever if you're trying to put it on a shelf. Fortunately, look at that collector's book. Fortunately, you can just pull this little box out, and I'll put that probably on the shelf, and I'll probably store this other thing away. But it was in 78, you're a kid, Star Wars has come out. It is the greatest thing you've ever seen. It's beyond anything you can imagine. And you ain't getting a sequel until 1980. So you got a ways to go. In fact, if you were a kid and you weren't reading Starlog magazine or anything, you probably didn't know if there was going to be a sequel to it. right? I mean, they finished the movie, they blew up the Death Star. But you got the figures, you bought puzzles, you bought books, you bought coloring books. You are jonesing for Star Wars. And in 78, along comes Battlestar Galactica, and it was freaking awesome. You got spaceships shooting each other up in space. You got guys with laser guns. You got Cylons, easily as cool as stormtroopers. And again, now we know, yeah, they're cyborgs. That's why they're wearing slacks. They're not robots and wearing slacks. They're cyborgs wearing slacks. And everybody knows cyborgs love slacks. That's no secret in science fiction. They enjoy a nice gabardine. Anyway, no, it was like a godsend. And the fact is, it is a really cool series as well. Kind of tying into ancient astronauts, the search for Earth. It isn't the same story as Star Wars in any way, shape, or form. It's got some similarities. But frankly, Star Wars took a lot of ideas from other places too. But so Battlestar Galactica was just wonderful. Really bummed us all out when it went away. And it went away because despite being quite popular, it was just so darn expensive to make. A problem with a lot of science fiction series. They've got to pull in massive ratings, and they've got to sell a lot of toys, or they don't stick around. And Battlestar Galactica, I don't think probably sold toys like it wanted to. I know that back in those days, I'm talking in the late 70s, money was tight. I had to choose between Star Wars figures and Battlestar Galactica. I was choosing Star Wars figures. I just was. But I love the design of the Cylon Raiders. I remember a friend of mine had a model of the Cylon Raider thing that his dad helped him put together, and it was so cool. And I think it made sounds too. The Viper, etc. I love the uniforms. I love the lore of the show. It was so good. It's canceled. We got Buck Rogers a year or so later, reused a lot of footage, and it was pretty cool too. And then the second season occurred. Any rate, but Battlestar Galactica was a really big deal back in the late 70s for all of us who were just wanting more and more and more Star Wars and couldn't get it. And books like these was just one more way to get into Battlestar Galactica and kind of bring it all home to you. So there you go. Marvel Super Special number 8, Battlestar Galactica. Thought I'd just show it off to everybody, let you see it. Read a little bit of that interview that I thought was interesting. And the rest of the interview is pretty interesting too, as he compares working on a movie, working on TV. You get a little bit of the behind the scenes of who was in charge of what and doing what. So if you're a big Battlestar Galactica fan, either try to find this. I guess if you're a big enough fan, you probably already have it. Or you can maybe find it out there somewhere online. Give it a read. Pretty cool. The articles, not bad, but, they don't really knock you over with how awesome they are. I think it was a way to fill in space. And you do get a couple little differences here than you do in the shows because they're working off earlier scripts. I always like to think of it as like deleted scenes or a director's cut when you're looking at these things. But what do you think? Do you have this book? Were you a big fan of Battlestar Galactica? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Love to chat with you about it. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, maybe subscribing, maybe sharing with a friend. That would help me out. I'd really, really appreciate it. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun. Go watch some cool old Battlestar Galactica. And I will see you hopefully soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.